Katy Balls is the Washington editor at the Times and the Sunday Times, and every Tuesday we check in with her to find out what is going on in Washington. Welcome to the show, Katy.
Thank you.
I'm just going to sit back and give you the floor to outline this extraordinary story. Trump getting in one plane, getting in a catering truck, getting in another plane, and so it goes on, while leaving your colleagues to act as a decoy.
Yes, as you say, it's quite an extraordinary story. First reported by the Washington Post, the New York Times has also had details, and all relates to the NATO summit. So when President Trump headed to NATO in Turkey recently, it was they made quite a show of the fact he was going to be in his new Air Force One. Now, his new Air Force One was a gift from the Qataris. At the time, that was pretty controversial, taking such an expensive gift, one. Number two, security concerns, and should a foreign government really be giving something to another government, and which really needs to have such high level security on national security grounds to fly the president around. It therefore had to be retrofitted with all these security measures. And then even at the time in NATO, it became clear that he wasn't flying back on the Qatari plane. What has since transpired is that he also didn't fly back on the old Air Force One, or at least not for most of the journey. Instead, he was abruptly switched to another aircraft. To get into that, we believe that he was on a catering truck, so no one quite realized he was getting off the plane, had just got on. And then he later switched back once he got to, well, basically in the UK at Mildenhall. That was where the latest switch happened. So when he landed back in DC, it looked as though he had just been on the old Air Force One the whole time. And we're told that some of the journalists on that plane, along with even some White House staff, did not know that the switch had happened. Why did this all happen? Because of Iranian assassination plots and threats. Clearly, the threat level was serious enough that they decided to come up with this quite elaborate scheme. It has left some journalists, perhaps some White House aides, we are yet to hear from them, asking if they were really just, cannon fodder at this point, should it have all gone wrong, as the Secret Service were concerned about enough to move him.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been an incredible threat because Turkey, of course, is next door to Iran, but it also makes the point that his spanking brand new jet from Qatar doesn't have quite the same defensive measures, despite the enormous amount spent on it, as the original Air Force One.
Yeah, and the White House has been very defensive on the issue of this new Qatari jet anyway. So it was already the case that he wasn't flying back on the Qatari jet and he had moved to the other plane. It's what we now know is on top of that other plane, where they were so concerned that he was on a third plane. But it's already been a case where the White House has been very annoyed at journalists when they have pointed out that the Qatari jet does not have the same measures as the current Air Force One. But Trump prefers the Qatari jet because I'm yet to go on this plane, but I'm speaking to journalists who have. It is nicer in the sense it is more spacious. I think even the journalist area, there are plug-in sockets for every journalist. You can imagine how that relates to Trump's quarters if the journalists also have it nicer. I think that the sleeping area for the president.
It's only a matter of time, Katy, but I love the fact that a journalist is happy just so long as they've got a plug and socket. They don't need a reclining seat. Just give a journalist a plug and socket and they're happy.
Look, it's the small things. I think there are also reclining seats, though. I think that is in every seat is reclining. But of course, the journalists were less happy when they think they were tricked into being on the old Air Force One, which might have been shot down by the Iranians while Trump was on a different plane. But of course, I think not quite knowing about it, because on this plane journey, just a final point is, they were told at one point to put the shutters down on the windows, and they later said, why was that? And Trump said, well, it's pretty dangerous flying with me, but suggested they were all in it together, and it seems they were not actually all in it together.
That's right. Let's turn back to the Democratic primaries, which we've been discussing every time you and I have met on this show, because they're electing, or interesting people are winning the Democratic primaries, and the latest one to be a front runner is Francesca Hong in Wisconsin, again described as a Democratic socialist. She's faced scrutiny because she's said things in the past on social media like cancel Thanksgiving. So again, it's this very interesting thing of the Democrats choosing what I think are actually quite charismatic people, but in American terms, having quite extreme views.
Yeah, I think there's two ways of looking at it, as you say. Some of these candidates, and Francesca Hong is actually a Democratic Socialist, and she is a card-carrying member of the DSA, so the Democratic Socialists of America. Whereas the Michigan candidate who won last week says he's not a DSA member. So this is I would say Francesca Hong is a purer version of democratic socialism than what we've seen previously, and therefore is being critiqued more. For example, Bernie Sanders has not endorsed her. AOC, the Congresswoman, has not endorsed her in the way they endorsed the Michigan candidate. When it comes to her seat, I actually met her a week or so ago. I followed her around in Wisconsin for a day on the campaign trail. And she is a chef. She's a single mother. She's in her 30s, and she was involved in local politics in Madison and Wisconsin. And she decided to go for it. She was seen as an underdog, but her campaign has cut through. It's been a largely digital campaign. And I think there is something about having a bit of personality and what lots of people see as authenticity in terms of relating to their problems. That's what I kept picking up, that has seen her become the favorite to win this race. The rub is that if you look at some of her past positions and past tweets, particularly she's talked about abolishing ICE. I think she stands by that one, but she's also talked about defunding the police. So she won't do that now because it wouldn't be in the power of the governor to do that if she were to become Wisconsin governor, and has also talked about cancelling Thanksgiving. Now, that one has received particular attention in the US, and she was asked, does she still want to cancel Thanksgiving? The idea of being it's an insensitive holiday, the origins too of Thanksgiving, and what happened there, meaning that it shouldn't take place. And she initially gave a bit of a non-answer, saying, I'm a chef, but it's a hard day for some people. Then she was asked it again, and this time she said, I love Thanksgiving, it's my favorite holiday. So she's clearly trying to, particularly in a state famous for farming and cheese and meat, trying to move slightly more to the mainstream, because I think the expectation is she'll win the primary, she'll be the Democratic candidate, but in a swing state, in a purple state like Wisconsin, is she too, on the edge? Is she too left-wing? Are some of these positions too isolating? Even if she has answered to say she's not going to do half this stuff to bring it home. And I think that is the concern of lots of more establishment Democrats here in Washington, D.C.
It's going to make the midterms absolutely fascinating if candidates like Hong continue to win these Democratic primaries. We shall have to see what happens. Katy Balls, Washington editor at the Times and Sunday Times, thank you so much for coming on the show and updating us about what is going on in Washington.